Poland, for instance, has closed its border. Poland
just closed its border with Belarus.
Poland, as a result, closing the border with Belarus.
How Poland's firm stance against China has halted vital rail traffic from Belarus. At the heart of this disruption lies China's substantial stake in Belarusian infrastructure, now caught in the crossfire.
Poland just slammed its borders shut on Belarus. On the surface, it looks like a local security move, but in reality, it's draining billions of dollars out of China's pocket and tearing holes in Beijing's trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative. Sounds unbelievable and disconnected, right? Well, it's not. The single decision to shut one border is choking off China's most important trade routes in Europe. It's like putting a single Lego in front of a bullet train and watching global trade trip over it. Trains are stranded, cargo is piling up, and money is bleeding away by the day. A gateway China spent years building to connect itself with Europe is now collapsing, and it's all because of Poland. But here's the real twist. This blockade isn't just hurting China's bottom line. It's putting Beijing in an impossible position because behind Belarus stands Russia, China's so-called strategic partner. And thanks to Poland, that partnership is starting to look more like a trap than a deal. Let's start with why this whole issue matters and China's place in this European affair. Because you're probably wondering how a Polish border crossing ended up in Chinese budget meeting. You see, the Belt and Road Initiative is China's grand plan to connect its factories to global markets, especially Europe. Since 2013, Beijing has poured billions into highways, railways, and ports to bypass slow and expensive sea routes and build faster, more reliable land corridors. Europe has always been the big price in this global plan. Just think of Germany, France, and the UK, all buying Chinese phones, cars, and clothes. That kind of access to such a market would blow China's trade through the roof, and it has. However, to get there by land, goods have to pass through Poland. In 2024, over 90,000 train trips carried 8.7 million containers worth about $380 billion between China and Europe. Poland handled a huge chunk of that, about 25 million tons of cargo valued at $30 billion. That's nearly 7% of total trade value funneled through a single country. As for September this year, Polish rail hubs have moved large volumes as well, translating to around 700,000 containers. If Poland says no to those trains, like it has now, the whole system falls apart. The question is, why does it have so much power? Simply put, Poland's role is massive because it's a gateway. Think of it as a highway where every truck has to pass through a single toll booth. Except, instead of paying $5, Xi Jinping's whole future depends on this toll booth. It's like the front door to Europe for Chinese trains. Goods start in cities like Xinjiang, roll through Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, then hit Poland at this city. From there, they fan out across Europe. Now, sea shipping still carries most of the trade, since about 90% of the goods go by boat. But trains are faster, taking 12 to 15 days compared to 30 to 45 days for ships. They're also cheaper by 20% per container. That's why trains carry high-value stuff like electronics, car parts, and fresh fruits, and even fresh fruit that needs to arrive fast. Poland processes over 90% of all these trains from China, making it a key link. If that link breaks, companies lose time, money, and trust in the whole BRI setup. So, with such an important role, why did Poland slam the door shut? There are a few reasons that we'll explore in this video, but it all starts with an immigration crisis that has been simmering for years and has really gotten out of control this year. You see, Belarus, Poland's neighbor to the east, has been sending thousands of people from places like Middle East, Africa, and Asia to Polish border. These aren't just people crossing on their own. Belarus is artificially making it happen. They fly migrants into Minsk on cheap flights, give them food, maps, and then point them towards Poland. Some even get tools to cut through border fences. Polish officials say over 20,000 people tried to cross in this manner in the first half of 2025. That represents a 40% jump from just last year. If you think there is some righteous reason for this, there is none. Belarus is simply doing this to cause trouble. It's trying to destabilize Poland as a way of heading back at EU sanctions from 2020 that were imposed on Belarus and Lukashenko after he cracked down on protests and supported Russia's war in Ukraine. It's a calculated move to undermine Poland's border security and the European Union without necessarily starting a real fight that Russia and Belarus will lose. When this migration crisis initially escalated back in 2021, Poland declared an emergency at the border. But that did not help much, and things kept getting worse. Then, just few days ago, Russia escalated its hybrid war by sending 19 drones inside Polish airspace. This was an unprecedented attack on NATO. After years of being fed up, the government of Poland finally had enough. On September 9th, Prime Minister Donald Tusk said, all border crossings with Belarus would close starting the night of September 11th. That meant no people, no trucks, no trains could pass. This main terminal, which handles billions in trade, went quiet overnight. To enforce this decree, Poland sent thousands of troops, built taller fences, dug trenches, and added cameras and drones. The goal was clear: stop the migrant push and protect the country. But unfortunately for China, that also meant stopping all cargo, including BRI trains. This is where China enters the equation as a victim of Russia and Belarus's action. The same two countries that China has been propping up for last 3 years. Those closed borders don't just block people, they block Belt and Road Initiative's main rail route into Europe. Chinese trains, packed with goods like laptop, car engines, and clothes, usually cross from Belarus into Poland without trouble. This terminal alone handled over 500 trains a month before closure. Since September 11th, that number has dropped to 0. Goods are stuck, piling up in Belarus, or rerouted to slower, pricier paths through Lithuania or back through Russia to other borders. Rerouting adds at least 5 days and up to 50% more cost per container. In the first week of the closure, at least 20 trains were delayed, holding cargoes worth over $200 million. If this lasts, the EU-China rail network, which ran 70,000 trips in 2024, could see half its volume vanish, just like that. That monetary slowdown is a non-starter for China, whose economy is already struggling. They have spent over $100 billion on this rail line since 2013, betting on Europe as the big payoff. With it blocked, companies lose big. Big names like Huawei and BYD, which ship tech and cars, now pay extra for air freight or switch to slower sea routes. Sea shipping, already disrupted by attacks in the Red Sea, costs more and takes weeks longer. In 2024, rail saved 75% on emissions compared to trucks and ships, but that green edge is gone now, and it's all because of Vladimir Putin. As the delays increase, that's money and time slipping away that China cannot afford during this trade war. This is not just about lost revenue, it's about lost trust. Europe imports around $550 billion worth of Chinese goods each year. Rail accounts for only 5% of that volume, but it carries high-value cargoes like medical equipment, electronics, and car parts. In all likelihood, they'll start sourcing this elsewhere, turning to North America or local suppliers. That ship hits China where it hurts. The Belt and Road Initiative was sold as fast and reliable alternative to sea shipping, but one border closure exposed a critical flaw and showed that it's not as solid as Xi Jinping promised. All this raises a deeper question. If one border can throw $1 trillion trade network off balance, how stable is the whole thing to begin with? The BRI was designed to link dozens of countries across continents in one smooth, unstoppable system, but Poland just proved it can be jammed with a single move. The world is watching, including countries in Central Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Many of them, already wary of China's influence, are now rethinking how much they want to rely on its routes. Poland did not just stop cargo. It exposed the weak spots in the entire setup. Right now, Chinese companies are feeling the fallout, with some reports of order drops up to 20% since the closure, which was only a week ago. The message from Europe is clear. Trust matters, and China's overland trade route just lost credibility. This frustration of lost revenue is being transferred to Kremlin, with China getting fed up with Russia over this. Back in 2022, they called their partnership No Limits, promising to work together on trade and security. Russia was supposed to keep things stable in Eurasia, so BRI trains could roll smoothly. Instead, Belarus, with Russia's backing, creates a migrant crisis that shuts everything down. That's a huge betrayal for Xi Jinping. Poland is really driving this betrayal in as its foreign minister met with China's foreign minister Wang Yi, laying out how Russia's games are hurting China's trade and economy. China thought Moscow would control its allies, but Belarus is running wild, and Russia is too focused or too bogged down in Ukraine to care. The result? China stuck with delays, losses, while Russia offers no fix. It's like building a highway only for your partner to blow up the bridge. Beijing's frustration is real and continuous. They invested billions in Russian rail lines, expecting clear paths to Europe. Joint projects like Moscow-Kazan high-speed rail were meant to speed up BRI shipments, but Russia's focus on war and chaos in Belarus ruins the whole thing. For now, China's state media is quiet, but Chinese exporters are vocal. Some are even calling Russia a bad. But Chinese people need Europe's market, not Russia's drama. Polish officials have even revealed that Beijing privately asked Moscow to calm things down, with no result. The timing was not random. It was all suspicious. Just days later, Russia launched its Zapad 2025 military drills, deploying 10,000 troops across Belarus and Western Russia. The exercises simulated conventional and nuclear warfare, including rollout of Oryzhnik missile system. For China, it was a nightmare. Its Belt and Road trains were already getting caught up in the migrant crisis at the Poland-Belarus border. Now, with drones flying from sky and missiles rolling through Belarus, a trade headache had turned into a full-blown security crisis. Beijing said a little, but its silence spoke volumes. Every drone, every drill made China look like it was chained to a partner it could not control, and Europe was watching. Then we also have the cyber attacks. Hackers linked to Russia have been coming at Poland hard, and the Deputy Minister for Digital Affairs confirmed that the Polish nation was facing between 20 to 50 attempts to damage critical infrastructure daily. That's every single day. They targeted hospitals, city services, and even railway systems that carry BRI cargo. These hits are part of a growing pattern of pressure that has intensified throughout the year. For China, this is not just annoying. Feels like betrayal. Beijing has spent years and billions building trust with Europe through trade deals and rail lines, only for Russia to undermine it with reckless stunts. What's worse, the trouble doesn't just stop at Poland's borders. In Central Asia, Russia has been quietly working against China's BRI plans. This region is critical for Beijing. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan handle millions of tons of cargo headed to Europe. In 2024, Kazakhstan alone moved 1.2 million tons of BRI goods, earning $500 million in transit fees. But Russia has been stirring the pot. It promotes its own group, the CSTO, as a way to keep control over Central Asia security. At the same time, it blocks Chinese projects. In Kazakhstan, protests against Chinese rail expansion erupted, with Russian media amplifying anti-China sentiment. Permits for new tracks are stuck, and local officials are dragging their feet. What should be a smooth trade path for China is now a tangle of delays and cost, all with Russia's fingerprint on it. The Arctic is another sore spot. China saw the Northern Sea route, a shipping path along Russia's Arctic coast, as a future gold mine. It could cut Europe-Asia shipping time by 10 days compared to the Southern Sea route. Since 2018, China has poured billions of dollars into Arctic ports, icebreakers, and joint deals with Russia to make it work. But this year, Moscow began shutting China out. It cited vague security concerns to block Chinese ships from key routes, leaving vessels That's hundreds of thousands of tons of cargo delayed, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, China's investment is sitting idle, frozen not by ice, but by Russian politics. For Beijing, it's a clear signal that Russia is more interested in control than cooperation. Africa is another region where Russia is causing headaches for Xi Jinping. Over the past 2 decades, Chinese companies have invested heavily in infrastructure across the continent, building roads, ports, railways, and energy projects through bilateral deals and Belt and Road partnerships. Countries like Mali and Burkina Faso have seen major Chinese-backed developments, especially in mining and transport. But Russia's growing footprint is complicating that picture. Through military ties and presence of mercenary groups like Wagner, Moscow has injected volatility into regions where Chinese firms operate. While direct clashes between Russian forces and Chinese companies have not been confirmed yet, the instability is real. Local governments are increasingly caught between China's economic influence and Russia's security entanglements. This tension is starting to affect China's reputation. Beijing has long positioned itself as a reliable or political partner in Africa. But as Russian-backed disruptions mount, that image is under strain. Investors are watching closely, and some projects are slowing down, not because of China's missteps, but because the ground beneath them is shifting. Then there is the obvious: Ukraine. The biggest tone in China's side. When Russia illegally invaded in 2022, China chose pro-Russia neutrality, hoping to keep trade flowing with both Europe and Russia. But that pro-Russia neutrality is backfiring. Europe now sees China as tied to Russia's war. EU sanctions this year hit 10% of BRI projects, costing Xi Jinping $2 billion in delays. Even public opinion in Europe is souring. Polls show that 60% of Germans want less Chinese trade, off from 40% just a year ago. On top of that, investment is slowing too. European funding for BRI projects dropped 15% this year. China has spent decades building an image as a practical, business-focused power, but Russia's war is making it look like a partner in crime. This year, a Chinese think tank recommended focusing on independent routes to Europe, a polite way of saying Russia is no longer reliable. If Poland's closure stretches into 2026, China will likely lean harder on countries like Turkey, Kazakhstan, building a network that bypasses Putin's Moscow. While all that is happening, another fact has solidified. Poland's new role is here to stay. It's no longer just a border guard. It's a global influencer, not a YouTube influencer. By controlling the flow of BRI goods, Poland is shaping trade and politics in ways few predicted. Its rail hubs, backed by EU funding, give it leverage over superpowers. Its military, now among NATO's strongest, make it a key ally. The United States and the EU are investing heavily in Poland's future, with 10 billion euros in new trade deal expected by 2027. Poland is showing the world that one country, no matter its size, can change the game by standing firm. In the end, Poland's border closure has done more than stop trains. It has exposed the limits of BRI, forced China to reconsider its alliance with Russia, and turned a small nation into a global force. One country, one decision, one border. And world's trade map is shifting. In great game of trade and power, quiet border is proving louder than the battlefield.